The disciples of the Temple of Tony Fauci versus common human sense. There's a great technique that the people in public health have used many, many years, many decades in a row to keep us all bamboozled. And it worked for a very, very long time. And then everything slipped during the era of COVID and the transing of kids. It's classic overreach. It's classic arrogance. And now is what's going on at the CDC. The firing of Susan Menorez, praise God for that. I didn't want her in that position. I railed against her in that position because it was clear who she was and what she was. She's a DARPA type. She's a DOD type. She's a do secret things to the American people type. So she's been fired, and right on cue, a bunch of people stepped down. And they're stepping down because there are two sets of beliefs at war here. RFK Jr. is said to be anti-so-called vaccine. RFK Jr. is saying some very simple things. We're going to safety test. We're going to do long-term testing to see what the results of these things are. When we've got strange safety signals, say this or that neurological condition that is exploding within kids, that has spiked 30 times, 40 times, 50 times in society, since the introduction of mass vaccination, we're going to study it. That's what he's saying. This is very controversial that he's going to study these things. Having looked at the data from the COVID shots, the data indicates to him and the people who run the CDC now that these shots, to say the least, are ineffective. In the words of RFK Jr., they have killed more people than they've saved. That's the words of the director of the National Institute of Health. He runs the public health system. Incidentally, 12% of people who ran the National Institute of Health, 12% have been doctors. So for all the people saying, but he's not a doctor, yeah, most of them aren't. What public health officials did to themselves during the COVID era cannot be overlooked. There's a reason that they wanted to create mystification around what they did, and there's a reason why the COVID era stripped that apart. When we were told to stay home and stay safe, never mind that the small businesses are shutting down, never mind that your kids are not in school, never mind that they're not getting socialized, never mind all those things, put that all aside, stay home and stay safe until the elections came. And the public health officials suddenly came out and said, we're suddenly doctors and nurses saying social justice is more important than social distancing. That was an actual meme they put out. Social justice is more important than social distancing. And they went in their white coats and did their presentations for the people. We're not dancing in TikTok videos anymore. We're telling you to leave your houses for the next few days and then go back in and shelter in place against this terrible dread disease that we probably helped invent in the lab in Wuhan, China. What we're watching is the disciples of the Temple of Tony Fauci versus common human caution. Hey, this is really weird. These injections don't appear to be working. Maybe we should look into why. Hey, this is really weird. The more often people get injected, the more likely they are to get an upper respiratory virus or a lot of other conditions, some of them neurological, some of them physical. That's weird. We should look at this. It's classic human caution. I mean, you could think of this on a much more simple basis, like this. Every time I eat fish, I get sick. Maybe you should try not eating fish. I can't do that because I've always eaten fish. What if you get sicker? The Temple of Fauci is the temple of personality. It's the temple of authority. It is the appeal to authority. Well, I am science itself. I represent science itself. RFK Jr. is not saying anything so ridiculous. He fired Susan Menorez on the same day that he pulled the emergency youth authorization for the COVID shots. When she was fired and temporarily refused to be fired, I'm going to just stay here. Just right on cue, a whole bunch of people came along and they stepped in. I'm tendering my resignation, and they continued tendering my resignation. And they proved as well why people do not trust public health officials. We'll share some of that in a second because they're going to want to pretend it's about this or that megaism, when in fact it's just this or that common sense. It's really, really simple common sense if you're a Christian, that you understand that all lives matter to God, all human lives. It's a very simple thing to know that we're all made in His image. In His image, He loves us. These are very simple facts of Christianity. It's also simple to understand this. You could vote in many ways. One of them is what you watch. Thank you for watching this. Please subscribe. Another is what you buy. There's an element you're going to buy for the rest of your life, and it's soap. I can't possibly make it sexy. I can't possibly make it dramatic. I can simply tell you this. Alan soaps exist to employ people like Alan and Ian who are impacted by autism. Alan to such a degree that he's effectively nonverbal. I can tell you that for the past 4 years, that has been the only soap I use because it's made in America. It's all natural. It's made by a family with 3 generations of soap making expertise. And because of the company's mission to employ young people like Alan and Ian, that has only been heightened over the past few months that I've learned that John, Alan's dad, is dying from cancer. It has only heightened my desire to get as many people to subscribe to their soap as possible before John goes to the Lord Jesus so that his wife has a better time running the company. So please give this soap a try. You can try a sample pack. If you love it, subscribe. If you don't love it, never buy it again. Go to alansoaps.com/Todd. That's alansoaps.com/Todd. The Temple of Fauci is the temple of, we'll tell you what we need you to know, not the truth. We'll scare you when it's necessary to scare you. We'll lull you to sleep when it's necessary to lull you to sleep. The Temple of Tony Fauci oversaw the obesity crisis in America, the increase of it. It oversaw the increase in mental health issues with kids. It oversaw the overproliferation of antibiotics to the point where books were written about the fact that people are becoming now at risk for diseases we long ago conquered because they've been given antibiotics far too often for things that you could overcome without antibiotics. It oversaw an increase in heart disease. It oversaw an increase in addictions to diet drugs and others. It oversaw an increase in addictions to opioids. The Center for Disease Control watched as Big Pharma came and went to Medicare and Medicaid and state agencies and invented pain as the 5th vital sign. Do you know what that is? This is where opium makers or opioid manufacturers went and invented a new life sign. If your patient is in pain, you haven't done your job. Well, what if the pain is just something like overcoming surgery? Well, you can't have that because if a patient's in pain, that's a vital sign. And so they sold opioids into the common use, much more common than ever should have been the case. The CDC oversaw that. The CDC has overseen a crisis of nutrition where people have been consuming things that the human body is not meant to consume. This is the Center for Disease Control, and all the while the Temple of Fauci existed to mystify all this stuff. Susan Menorez was fired. The CDC is now said to be in complete chaos. Let's review some of the chaos.
Only a month in, she is now out, and that's not all. As the show has gone on, we've heard of more resignations. The National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases, that head, if we can put his picture up, also the CDC medical officer has resigned at this hour, and the head of Zoonotic Division also resigning from CDC. So it is happening, and we're getting wire reports right now during the show saying that some of them are citing overstatement of risks of vaccines and the CDC budget cuts in resignation letters.
Purely planned. So the first guy they showed is a guy who's supposedly a doctor. He did earn an MD, doesn't act like a doctor. His name is Dimitri C. Dizaklis. Oh, incidentally, interesting about him, he ran the monkeypox response. And one of the things he said during the monkeypox response was that some people's risk is another person's joy. Monkeypox is spread through sexual contact. It was being particularly virulently spread in societies of men who have sex with men. But we couldn't go out and warn people. We couldn't say this is how it's spread because that's stigmatizing. And again, one person's risk is another person's joy. So his decision was to push the shots, not to ask people to change or even just modify their behavior for a short time. There's also this. He's apparently a Satanist. Now, should Satanists be banned from holding public office? I think so. But we can't. Because the First Amendment of the United States Constitution allows people the right to carry out their religious beliefs, to live their faith. This is a guy who's been running the monkeypox response, and he is pretty openly satanic. There's the hats, there's the shirts, there's a pentagram on his leather straps, and apparently on a tattoo on his chest. Much more disconcertingly than concerning, though, is this very simple fact. He ran a public health response by having one focus and one focus alone. Let people continue to engage in risky behavior by non-stigmatizing. When monkeypox was breaking the United States of America and it was becoming this big thing, and he was busy renaming it and reminding people don't stigmatize, just go take the beautiful, beautiful vaccine and continue to go to clubs, continue to engage in BSDM, no reason to change those behaviors. I was in Mexico. I remember coming across a sign in Mexico, and it was in the airport. It was reminding men who have sex with men that monkeypox was circulating. It didn't seem to stigmatize. It was just a statement of fact. But in the Temple of Fauci, this guy was the leading health authority in this. And the leading health authority said our proper response as a nation is for people to continue to have sex parties because some people's risk is another person's joy. And this takes us back to the Temple of Fauci. People were told during the COVID era by the Temple of Fauci that everybody was at equal risk from the COVID flu. Everybody. That had never been true. And this simple, common human caution would tell you this. You mean to tell me that someone with a robust, healthy immune system, who has no comorbid factors, who is young, who has excellent respiration, excellent lung function, and kidney function, is at the same risk as someone who is in their 80s and bedridden with 5 or 6 comorbid factors, including existing respiratory issues and inability to clean the body's blood because of kidney problems? We're all at the same risk. A little baby born straight from the mother's womb with the most robust crossover immunities and T-cell immunities, the body being as ready for disease as it ever is at the same risk as that person, that bedridden person, or a vitamin D deficient, lifelong smoker, user of tobacco, obese person? See, simple human caution would say this: that can't be true. The COVID era showed us one thing, and this is what RFK Jr. is fighting against. It showed us that what public health authorities want us to consider public health is what they say is public health. Public health equals what we say it does. Early in the pandemic, so-called, Fauci said if he was a young person, he would take a trip to Italy. This would be a great time to book a cruise to Italy because the prices are low. This is where COVID was spiking in Italy. Weeks later, he came back and said, we all need to lock up, stay inside, never go out again. It was whatever he said it was. When the vaccines were 100% safe and effective, when they were 100% good at stopping transmission and infection, that's what public health was. When it was 98%, that was public health. And then when it was 80%, that was public health. Public health became Tony Fauci. It became the Temple of Fauci, and human skepticism was questioned. When people ask simple questions like, hey, if the injections work, why don't they work? We were cautioned against doing our own research. What we're watching at the CDC is a right sizing. God gave us minds capable of human skepticism. We can look, for instance, at a log across a river and say, it looks pretty slick. There's a bunch of moss on that. I don't think I'm going to try to make it across. Public health authorities could say, no, that's a very special kind of moss. We demand you go across it. That's the only way across. In fact, that's exactly what they've done with so many approaches to public health. This is the only way to do it. Vitamin D, don't be a conspiracy theorist. Vitamin D has never worked until public health authorities come back one day and say, hey, by the way, vitamin D works again, but only in this formulation from Big Pharma.